Matthew chapter 20. For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour, and saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and said unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way. Again he went out about the 6th and 9th hour, and did likewise. And about the 11th hour he went out, and found others standing idle, and saith unto them, Why stand ye here all the day idle? They say unto him, Because no man hath hired us. He saith unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that ye shall receive. So when the even was come, the Lord of the vineyard saith unto his steward, Call the laborers, and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. And when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. But when the first came, they supposed that they should have received more, and they likewise received every man a penny. And when they had received it, they murmured against the goodman of the house, saying, These last have wrought but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal unto us, which have borne the burden and heat of the day. But he answered one of them, and said, Friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst not thou agree with me for a penny? Take that thine is, and go thy way. I will give unto this last even as unto thee. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good? So the last shall be first, and the first last, for many be called, but few chosen. And Jesus, going up to Jerusalem, took the 12 disciples apart in the way, and said unto them, Behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man shall be betrayed unto the chief priests and unto the scribes, and they shall condemn him to death, and shall deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge, and to crucify him, and the third day he shall rise again. Then came to him the mother of Zebedee's children with her sons, worshipping him, and desiring a certain thing of him. And he said unto her, What wilt thou? She saith unto him, Grant that these my 2 sons may sit, the one on thy right hand, and the other on the left, in thy kingdom. But Jesus answered and said, Ye know not what ye ask. Are ye able to drink of the cup that I shall drink of, and to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? They say unto him, We are able. And he saith unto them, Ye shall drink indeed of my cup, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared of my Father. And when the 10 heard it, they were moved with indignation against the 2 brethren. But Jesus called them unto him, and said, Ye know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. And whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life as a ransom for many. And as they departed from Jericho, a great multitude followed him. And behold, 2 blind men sitting by the wayside, when they heard that Jesus passed by, cried out, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou Son of David. And the multitude rebuked them, because they should hold their peace. But they cried the more, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou Son of David. And Jesus stood still, and called them, and said, What will ye that I shall do unto you? They say unto him, Lord, that our eyes may be opened. So Jesus had compassion on them, and touched their eyes, and immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him. Matthew chapter 20 begins with a parable of the vineyard and the first hires and those hired at the 11th hour. And I actually talked about this in my last video, because chapter 19 ends with Jesus talking about how many of the first will be last, and the last will be first. And then chapter 20 begins with this parable explaining that. And then Jesus says again that the first will be last and the last first. And I guess I'll just try to keep it short, because I already talked about this. But it's just really, in my mind, this is one of the big parables, because it's really something that I can relate to, and that I can relate to in multiple ways. I can very much relate to that attitude of the first hire. I feel like this is something that every human understands, this emotion of you're working really hard to accomplish something, you finally accomplish it, and then you watch somebody else barely try and they get the same thing on their first try. It can be frustrating and it can be annoying, but I also understand that that's not the best, that's not the correct way to feel. Just because we feel a certain way, that doesn't mean that it's the best way. And we actually have a lot of negative things that are easy to do, or I don't know if it's instinctual or what. There's just the way that humans are. There's a lot of relatable things that aren't so good, and that you need to realize that that's not the best way, and that there's a better way to be. That there's a good way to exist, to be. And this is just one of those big ones. You need to be happy for other people's happiness. If something good happens to somebody else, you need to be happy for that. And it doesn't have anything to do with you. I think that this almost has kind of a stay in your own lane philosophy going to it too. What's it to you if somebody wants to give good to somebody else? That shouldn't be anything to you. And so I just think this is a really good parable, and there's a lot to learn from it, and it's a good one because I can relate to the bad people in it. I feel like that's worth pointing out. I like this parable because, unfortunately, I can really relate to the first hires. But, I mean, thankfully, it's not something, I don't think I struggle with that a lot, but I can certainly relate to it, and I like that because it gives you something to work on. I guess it's one of those things where we don't like to think that failing is good, or we don't like being wrong, but it's actually really helpful. Seeing a parable that it brings out a negative aspect of yourself can be infinitely more useful than reading a parable and going, oh yeah, I got that. So in this chapter, Jesus foretells of his death and resurrection, and I could go back and reread, but I feel like he's done this a few times up to this point, and I think it's just he knew that they don't really fully understand what's happening, and so he tells it to them multiple times because it's that important. And yeah, I don't think that they fully understood what was all about to take place. A really interesting happening in this chapter is the whole instance with Zebedee's mom, and to me, it's a funny instance of cringe in the Bible. To me, this is so cringy. You have these two, I don't know how old the Zebedee's mom's children were, but they probably were not that young at this point. I don't know. But Zebedee's mom went up to Jesus and asked an embarrassing question in front of everybody. It's just so palatable, the cringe in this. But I think it'd be easy to overlook if you're just reading it like it's dry. This whole situation is just very comical and cringy, that these people's mom would go up to Jesus and ask something embarrassing in front of the whole crowd. And then they're ridiculed. And then the crowd ridicules them, which I think is interesting, and it's something that I notice whenever it happens in the Bible, and I feel like it happens a lot, that the disciples are criticizing people. And to me, it almost feels like they were all a part of something so big that they didn't know how to act correctly. And yeah, it's weird to me when there's instances. There's another one later in this chapter that I'll talk about, just where Jesus's disciples they will just rebuke people for what doesn't seem like an offense to me. And so just in a few chapters ago, I don't remember exactly, but when children came to Jesus and the disciples rebuked the children, it just seems like there was a lot going on and not everybody knew exactly how to act. And it seems like a lot of times Jesus had to tell them how to act, stop rebuking all these people. But I wonder, I mean, maybe there were a lot of people that did need to be rebuked, and Jesus was being followed around by tons of people all the time. And so maybe that's kind of why they were protective of him. Well, anyways, after Zebedee's mom embarrasses them, here's an instance of Zebedee's mom asks Jesus a question, and then Jesus answers them in a way that doesn't seem very straightforward, but that means that he's probably telling you something. So Jesus responds with talking about how the princes of Gentiles exercise dominion over them. They that are great exercise authority. But then Jesus says that let him who's great be your minister. Jesus says that that's not the right way. Something that happens over and over in the Bible is that Jesus says this is the way that things are today with man, but with God it's completely the opposite. That's a very common theme. And so ZBD's mom, right, she's wanting to ask Jesus if her two sons can be the most important. And that was the embarrassing question. And then Jesus's response is saying, talking about the times of the day. Well, look at the princes of the Gentiles who are exercising dominion over them. And then he's saying, we're not going to be like that. We're going to do it like this. Let the chief among you minister. And it's also interesting, I mean, I'll just keep it really short, that the word minister today has been flipped, that certain denominations, they take minister to mean some position of authority or power. But here, Jesus is talking about it in the opposite way. They're supposed to humble yourself. The chief among you should humble yourself. And Jesus washed the disciples' feet, and Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. So be like Jesus in that way. In the same way, what this reminds me of is, what did the Pharisees and the Sadducees think? Did they think that the Messiah was going to come down and say, "Bow down before me, peasants. I am the Messiah. You will do my will"? Like, God doesn't need that. God doesn't need to have slaves. That, in my mind, that's what the Pharisee. When you study the religions like Jews and Muslims, it's like that's what they thought the Messiah would do, like come to earth and enslave people and make their life lavish. Why would God could just create anything that he wants for himself? Why would he need slaves? That doesn't make any sense. So this is just a good example in the Bible, and where Jesus specifically gives the best example himself. Don't act like the phonies who pretend like the most important people get waited on hand and foot. The most important people should be doing the waiting, should be healing people, being right in on the action, not being served to, doing the serving. And the chapter ends with just another example of what I briefly mentioned earlier. It always takes me aback when it seems like the disciples around Jesus were really quick to be yelling at people. 2 blind men wanted to be healed by Jesus, and they were praising him. And the disciples were yelling at the blind people to not be healed. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Shouldn't they want everybody to be healed by Jesus? And so that's just a really strange aspect of the disciples that I can never quite figure out. And my only guess is that it's because Jesus was just such a big deal that anywhere he would be, huge amounts of people would come and try to be healed by him. So I'm guessing that they were just trying to keep space and try to keep him safe and keep people away from him. But it does seem weird that because Jesus had been spending an enormous amount of time healing people, and if these are 2 blind people asking to be healed, you'd think the disciples would be like, "Oh yeah, here's a perfect opportunity. Jesus can heal you." All right, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. God bless everyone.